kind of pity Bernie Sanders because he's the last gasp of the old style socialists of, from the 1930s through the 1980s. He was an apologist for the Soviet Union. He always just wants to talk about class stuff, the working class, people powered this. He thinks the answer to every problem is basically spending more money, confiscating the wealth of the wealthy. He's a dyed-in-the-wool, old guard, unreconstructed socialist, social democrat. At least I think we should at least give him the benefit of the doubt that that's what he is. When he says that's what he is, but he still has this view that the Scandinavian model circa, 1962 is like the North Star for how America should be organized. And the problem that he ran into is that by 2016, that stuff had given way. 2012 maybe is a better date. That stuff had given way to this intersectionality nonsense. And all intersectionality really is in this context. We can do a deeper dive on Kimberly Crenshaw and take it more seriously. But for shorthand purposes, intersectionality just simply represented the triumph of identity over class as the defining construct of the left. And I think there are all sorts of sociologically interesting reasons for it. Part of it has to do with the fact that just too many left-wingers are very well off. I'm not saying they're all rich by any stretch of the imagination, but as Rob Henderson, argues, a lot of the identity politics stuff, these are luxury beliefs. You have to be a member of like the petite bourgeois at the minimum to traffic in a lot of this nonsense. The working class doesn't really go in for a lot of the transgender stuff and the abolish the police stuff and all that kind of thing. This is a very elite campus focused luxury belief, right? And what intersectionality did was come up with, I don't think it's actually a serviceable construct, but it served the purposes of the people who wanted to use it. It gave people an excuse to say, your racial identity, your gender identity, these things are more important components of your political identity, your social identity, than mere class. And when you change that, when you change the construct to say that being low income matters less than being part of a racial or sexually marginal minority, you get different kinds of arguments and you get different kinds of projects. And I think so one of the things that kind of defines the new dissidents, right, the new ex-leftists, is a focus on the excesses, overstepping, utopianism of radical intersectionality, right, of radical identity politics. If you go through, like, a lot of these people, like Yasha Monk, who's a good, on economic stuff, he's like a good liberal Democrat as far as I can tell, right? I mean, old style, probably closer to Bernie Sanders economics than mine. I don't know that, but it wouldn't shock me. But he's looked at the data. He's looked at the facts. He's looked at the culture. He's seen this up close. And he says, identity politics is poison. And it's tearing the country apart, and it's teaching us all sorts of terrible things, and it's causing us to turn our backs on, liberalism rightly understood. And that's what, John McWhorter with his, wokeism is a religion stuff, he's making the exact same kinds of arguments. Caitlin Flanagan, who we had on here, she's making those kinds of arguments. She's pointing out the illiberalism of the new leftist orthodoxy, which does not focus on class. Obviously, it's in favor of the Green New Deal and, you know, Medicare for all and all that kind of stuff. But that stuff takes a back seat to the stuff that really excites them, which is this, you know, identity politics stuff, the sort of gender fluidity stuff. And that's the stuff that, you know, I think among the best of these new dissidents, that's the stuff they're pushing back on, right? They're the ones pointing out the laws of unintended consequences, biting on this kind of utopianism. And I think that's interesting, right? I think it's not the same story as the people who got fed up with the damn hippies and the worship of the Weather Underground or the Black Panthers or, you know, the smash monogamy crowd of the 1960s. But culturally, it's kind of the same thing. These people are refugees from that milieu. And they're just like, wait a second, there's a lot of groupthink here. There's a lot of utopianism here. You're harming a lot of people by trying to impose your deeply ideological vision about human nature on the crooked timber of humanity below you. And that very much was the sort of same kind of insight that caused, you know, the quote unquote neocons of the 1960s to break with the left. But back then it was the kinds of issues they were breaking against had more to do with criminal justice and welfare policy and that kind of thing. And it has to do with the kind of frameworks that people were breaking from, the James Burnhams and Max Eastmans and Frank Myers and Whittaker Chambers, that they were breaking from in the 30s to 1950s.